Welcome to today's Software AG webcast titled An EA Approach to Technology Business Management. Today's webcast will be presented by Jeff Chancellor, Principal Systems Engineer at Software AG. As we move through today's presentation, we invite and encourage you to submit any questions that you may have via the Q&A box, which is located on the bottom center of your webcast dashboard. We will address your questions at the end of today's program. In the event that we're not able to answer your question, your submission will be noted, and today's presenter will be back in touch with you as soon as possible. Today's presentation is being recorded. This program recording will be made available to you in an email that will be sent to you within approximately 24 hours. Additionally, this webcast recording will be posted to the Database and Natural playlist on the Software AG YouTube channel later today. With that, it is now my pleasure to welcome Jeff Chancellor.
Thank you, Will, and thank you everybody for making time in your schedule to listen to this presentation. Hopefully you're going to learn something here, as I have learned about TBM over the years and added it to my EA skills. But let's move forward. The agenda for today is starting with 4 tenets that guide our journey. And then we're going to go into the EA concepts applied to technology business management. And in essence, the EA is all about connecting the dots, and we'll show you how those dots get connected to TBM's perspective. We'll present the TBM framework, the TBM taxonomy, and the model, and then we'll also contrast that against the EA taxonomy and model. The main tenets that we're going to work with today are starting with alignment. Alignment is making sure that when you have cost brought into a repository such as Alphabet, that those costs are aligned to the objects that they are meant to represent. The alignment also ensures that you get line of sight as you start aligning the costs that are brought in to the repository across the many objects that you have in the repository. It's not uncommon that sometimes we have hundreds or even thousands of applications and several hundred projects that are going on, so that alignment is a real key to making sure that we are effectively managing our finances as we move ahead. The other tenet is that of optimization. One of the things that we learn throughout EA and our TBM training is that we need to optimize our spend and optimize how we account for spend. It is often in EA practices a way to say, let's remove duplicate applications and optimize our portfolios. The same is true for spending. You know, we want to make sure that we are not duplicate spending on the same types of tasks, the same types of requirements as we deliver change. Governance plays an important role because we want to make sure that we are controlling the assets that we have in our IT portfolios. We want to make sure that they are properly administered and managed and maintained over time, and that as we account for spending for those assets, that we can respond and reply the results of our governance activities and spend to the executives. And finally, one of the things that's really a solid tenet here is the agility to readjust the cost. It's not uncommon to hear sudden changes in the way things need to be accounted or need to be refunded. And certainly with today's news, gosh, we're seeing a tremendous need and agility for handling situations such as this coronavirus that's around us right now. Agility is a key thing then in being able to make sure that your finances are accounted for. From a business context, what we see on the EA side in mapping IT spend is that as we start at the bottom, we look at releasing systems and services out into the production landscape. And those released services and plans are mapped and aligned to applications and services. Going further up the chain, the applications are then aligned to the products that you are offering to your stakeholders or constituent markets. And they're also aligned to the business capabilities, which then align back up to your overall enterprise strategy. The thing that's been in place for a long time is accounting for spend on applications and servers and so forth. And so we have gotten practice over the years in the EA about answering cost questions, but sometimes the costs are recovered and reflected differently. The other thing that we now need to do is to look at our release plans for new things that are being released into the production environment, and those projects or agile release trains that are being run to deliver changes. And we track that spend just like we're tracking the EA alignments on the left-hand side. We're tracking the financial spend and making sure that the projects are connected to those services that are being changed and the products that are being adjusted, the capabilities that are being served, and the strategy that is driving all of the effort that goes on. And so we look at our investments, and we often are asked the questions, how does the projects contribute to strategy and support the business? The nature of the projects is that of change. We hear about the as-is landscape where we have connected the dots across the as-is. We want to connect the dots across the to-be landscape. And we want to account for funding that not only runs the business, but grows the business and changes the business as well. The TBM framework, there's the framework and the taxonomy and then the model, but the framework is really about some key activities. And what we see across the top and the bottom is that we should be in a continuously improve cycle that is always trying to optimize, how we run our enterprise and how we run our agencies. Across the bottom, we want to make sure that we are positioning the systems that we put in place for the best value. And we want to make sure that we deliver value for the money. And on the right-hand side, we want to make sure that we understand that there is some demand shaping that could be enacted as well as we start having these conversations. And there's really two sides to the business. It's run the business, where we look at the conversations for cost for performance, the business aligned portfolio, and then change the business. Is that making sure that we are properly and correctly investing for innovation, and that we are accounting for that spend and that funding with the utmost ability to be agile and change things as we move forward. So this is the actual TBM framework, which is talking about how do you manage and continuously improve, continuously position for value. This is the taxonomy that is the categorization set of objects that we account for cost. And at the bottom, this is where we bring in the cost that we incur from the ledger. And so these cost pools are high-level categories or low-level categories, if you want to look at them from that view. But they are where the costs are accumulated and stored. And at the bottom of this taxonomy, this is deemed the financial view, so that you're seeing the costs and you're seeing the categories of cost at the cost pool level. Sitting at a layer above are the IT towers and their sub-towers, where you now then allocate and align those costs that you encounter with the actual cost, the IT towers that you see here. There's the application cost. What does it cost to develop applications? What does it cost to provide business, software? We look for compute, costs. We look for data center costs, platform costs. Those are the IT towers where then you are, required to make sure that you account for your costs and align them to the towers. As we move up, we are now into the IT view, where we're taking those assets for applications and projects and so forth, And then we're looking at the different types of products and services that our agency or our enterprise provides. There is a seemingly a dividing line here about with business services and shared services being more of a business view, and then end user services, platform services, infrastructure services, and then the new stuff being more of the IT view. And then finally, we need to account for these costs of, how the business is consuming the products and services, how are they allocated those costs there. And then on the right-hand side, we need to know what business capabilities are receiving the funding and how much should we fund each of the capabilities to make sure that we deliver optimum services to our markets. And so this taxonomy has been established based on best practices for the last several years. And it is really the cornerstone of financial reporting through TBM, because it is a shared and a standard taxonomy and standard categories of cost that we can leverage. And if we remember that there are financial views down here at the bottom, the IT views typically occupy the middle layers of the taxonomy, and the business views are once we get to the business units and the business capabilities, we can account for the costs that roll up. And it's not just an accumulation of cost. All the costs are maintained at the cost pool level, and therefore, if I do my roll-ups to the towers, the total, monies accounted for must be the same as they are accounted for in the cost pools. And as I roll up, I still have to balance and achieve the same monies that are brought in or the same monies that are rolled up. They just occur in different denominations, so to speak. The next view that we get from TBM is the actual model. And this model is the actual translation of actual transactional cost pulled in from the ledger and brought into the cost pools. And then they're rolled up into towers. And then we look at the projects and investments that are going on. And as we think about projects are where we fund change. And that's where we ask for money to be spent on change and to innovate. At the same time, we also may, enact a project from a government perspective to actually maintain existing systems. And so we see these different types of projects that are going on within the government. We might have an operations and maintenance project or O&M project. And then we might have a DME project, which is development, modernization, and enhancements. And so as we run these projects, we're now rolling up costs, allocating costs to those projects that can then be applied toward the delivery services or the IT services, and then on up toward the end user business services or shared services, and finally rolled up into the business units and capabilities that are being driven by the change. And so these perspectives within TBM need to be accounted for within tool sets that help you manage better on your finances. In essence, some of the things that we need to change is the move from reactive to strategic. And some of the reactive measures that we see over the years about how to reduce cost, we stop hiring, we stop filling positions, we freeze project budgets, and sometimes we even squeeze those project budgets and say that, we can't deliver everything at this point in time. Maybe we're going to have to put it off for a certain period of time. There's a variety of activities that are truly just focused on cost reduction, but it also changes the amount of work that you can deliver. If we were to move toward a strategic architecture-based cost reduction approach, one of the things that we want to do, and one of the things we mentioned in the overall framework, is this concept of changing the operating model or shaping the demands from the business. And so what we want to do in essence is to not necessarily just cut, but what we want to do is change what we're delivering, when we're delivering it, and try to achieve a better value delivery and a better delivery cadence by changing how we operate at times. And so you'll see this with maintenance and process outsourcing. You'll also see this if we could move toward a shared services approach where we leverage some of the services that other agencies are provided. And we're seeing a lot of that these days. So let's talk a little bit about now how Alphabet gets into the picture and how it supports the TBM models. And so Alphabet has been a leading platform for quite a number of years for enterprise architecture, and it's been a leading or the leader of leaders in the IBM or IT portfolio management for applications market space. And the way that it does that, Alphabet supports the creation of different portfolios. One of the things that we'll see is that we can address the business architecture layer, and this is where we would say take our ability to manage business capabilities and make sure that they are, one of the anchor points in this TBM model. We'll also see the organizations, which translate into the business units, and then we can also adjust other layers in the business architecture. The next thing that we'll see that Alphabet provides is support for managing and cataloging and documenting and defining your service architectures, whether they're business services, support services, putting them into groups and managing the services as a group, as a separate portfolio, and then tacking them to what applications are providing the services and what organizations could also be service providers in your IT landscape. We have long been an expert at application portfolio management and application portfolio governance, and it's not uncommon for some of our larger customers to have thousands of applications divided into many portfolios and for whatever purposes. So Alphabet provides a solid foundation for managing your application inventory and your application portfolios. Over the years, we have also found that Alphabet is very, very good at tracking and aligning projects from an architecture perspective. And what that really means is that you treat the projects as investments and changes to your as-is state. And within Alphabet, one of the things that is very important is to understand exactly which assets are affected by change so that you can track individual changes to the architecture as the project moves forward. You'll also see in Alphabet that there's also demand management, which is where your change requirements come from, either driven by the business or driven by technology change, or certainly technology end-of-life situations. But Alphabet provides a solid way to define your investments and define your investment request. And then finally, the support for the common structures of technology business management are reflected in the IT towers, the cost pools, and the cost management areas within the Alphabet repository. So in this model, the automation that is provided by Alphabet is as follows. If I think that I'm going to get all of my costs from the general ledger and they're magically going to appear, the Alphabet needs to be able to take those costs from the general ledger and bring them into the Alphabet repository. And we do that by managing cost centers that are assigned into the cost pools and the cost towers. And so we have a series of routines that we will show you today that actually helps you import these costs in a schedule and in a frequency that is suitable for your needs. And once the costs are brought into Alphabet, we'll have a series of cost editors at the asset level or at the tower level that lets us, adjust and readjust and reallocate cost as we need to sort of balance out our financial perspectives. And then after we get these costs assigned to projects and investments and the other assets that are in play, Alphabet also comes pre-configured with a set of cost reports that are TBM centric. And so then you can now generate these outputs and output visualizations on the screen. And if necessary, you can take these reports and export them to a format such as PowerPoint or an Excel sheet that you can take to meetings and have more detailed conversations about, how are the costs being managed in Alphabet. One of the things that we'll start with in the demonstration today is a look at, how does Alphabet, import and create and manage the IT towers and the sub towers. So we'll take and look at this screenshot and this structure as we get into the product. And then as we get further down into the details, you'll see that at a sub tower level, you're developing cost centers that are where you're going to accumulate cost. And you'll see that cost centers are developed from a year perspective, and then where they fit into the enterprise or the agency. And once we bring those costs in and assign them to these cost centers, is that you'll get to see what type of cost and what category of cost spend at each one of the categories. And what I had a hard time with was thinking about the cost types and the cost centers and the taxonomy, the tower, the pool. And so we have provided a simple structure that is by year, by org, by cost pool, by sub tower, and even by capability. We'll also see how these dynamic reports, where do we spend and invest our budget. You'll see this report and this visualization that you can filter and generate different perspectives with it. And then finally, you'll see other reports such as compare, your planned spend versus your previous spend versus what are you doing current year. And we'll see some of these reports in action within Alphabet. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is to take one more screen and just say, if you need to bring in more cost, one of the easiest formats that we have for bringing in TBM cost is through an Excel provided template. And we'll generate that template for you with the linkages to the different assets so that all you need to do is make sure you get the right cost allocated to the right asset. And we'll demonstrate this Excel import in the tool set. What I'm going to show you is an Alphabet configuration that's suitable for the federal government, and we have in place with some of our existing customers, and the feedback has been very good on this Alphabet configuration. So let me switch over to my Alphabet instance and bring in the system. I have timed out, so I'm going to start a new session here, and I'm going to log into Alphabet. So the first thing that we'll see is that we see a home screen in Alphabet, and it has some imagery on it. It has your picture. My picture wouldn't work for the camera, so I couldn't put my picture here. But we'll also have an ability to register new objects, new types of objects. You'll see on the very home screen, what objects you have responsibility for and what objects have been recently modified across the repository. And then there's a couple of nice measurements and metrics. How is your application data? How complete is that data? And then who are the responsible parties for your assets? As we swing across the main screens, we'll talk about managing your portfolios. This is where Alphabet, you've seen those pictures on the slides. You'll see a set of questions that allows you to analyze your different portfolios. For example, if you want to know who owns the applications, that's by business owner. role and maybe your organizational structure, those types of questions. What is the application portfolio? There are questions within the Alphabet Accelerator that do that. But we're going to focus our time over here under the investment analysis. And as we started talking about the TBM, the model, the first thing we're going to look at is the IT towers. And so there's a convenient link to jump into the IT towers in Alphabet. And in our Alphabet meta model, what we see are the concept of cost center groups. But when I select one of the cost center groups, I see that group is functioning as an IT tower, and it's the application IT tower. And we have three different tabs here that lets me see the overview of the tower, the description that is provided by the TBM Council. We see the sub-towers that are listed underneath this tower. And as we go a little bit further down, we start seeing some aggregated cost to this whole summary level. As we look at this particular IT tower, what we'll see is that from an operational expense, OpEx monies, what are we doing and what are we maintaining for our operational monies? We have 4 applications and 6 services that are in play. And so you see an application here, CRM CSS, and you see the bar that's stacked up. We're spending 1.7 million per year on this application. Looks like the majority of our costs that are being tracked and being spent are related to licensing. And so if you hover over the color bands, here's an expense, general expense, here's depreciation and amortization, and then we see the other applications down here as well. You'll also see up at the top, current year plan budget is roughly $5 million. We've almost spent that according to the date and data that's in this repository as an example. We also see just one level below a visualization that lets us see our spend trend over the last 5 years. And so from 2016 to 17 to 18 to 19, we were fairly consistent. And then all of a sudden, a lot of new licenses has come into play here from the application IT tower. And then we also might see capital expenses that are related not necessarily to applications, but projects that are changing those applications. And so we'll see the different types of costs here, the different amounts as we hover over the different costs. And we'll also get a planned budget for our CapEx spend, almost 18 million, and we're tracking pretty well on top of that across 10 projects. Anytime we want to bring up the report to full screen, Alphabet provides a quick mechanism to make it full screen. In this selection, you can say select a year, and it will show you the projects that were accounted for in that year. And if you just want to see a general purpose there, just let's show you what we've spent over the time in that year. A simple back click will get you back into that area. And then you can just, again, change tabs, go back to the overview, and look around. In the Explorer, which is this area on the left, I can expand the IT tower. I can see now the sub-towers that are coming up according to the TBM taxonomy. And so I see application support and operations, I see application development, and then I see business software. And as I track up and down these sub-towers, I'm getting the same format that I am used to for seeing the tower level, but now I start seeing it at the lower level. I'm going to pick on business software as a sub-tower for this particular demonstration. And at the overview screen, one of the things I'm going to see is I've got cost centers and cost pools associated here. And so when I look at the Explorer tree and understand that, here are those year-over-year cost tracking that I've been doing underneath the IT Subtower business software over the years. So at the Subtower level, I also have a view of operational expenses, again, that looks familiar. Here's an application, here's CRM, CSS again. It's been, reflected in the Subtower as well as the overall tower. And then I'm also looking down here at the assets attributed to business software from the Subtower level. While I'm on this screen, let's go down here and select one of the cost centers, and let's understand what type of cost is distributed here. And so for 2020, at the all finance organizational level, I'm going to look for the internal labor costs that are rolled up into the business software Subtower. And so what I'm seeing here is that I have accounted for $583,000 of expenses going up and being allocated all the way to the top. And the object distribution is just being distributed simply. I see the different costs that are allocated here. You see the current year is $583,000. You'll see the assigned objects. There's a continuous improvement project, and then all of those costs, 100% of those 583 has been allocated to that project. When I look down, and I'm going to slide this over just a little bit so you can see the cost center names. So I'm staying with the all finance business unit, and I'm looking at outside services. So now this cost center is reflecting the outside services that were paid for and how it's distributed out to the project. Notice my distribution, I'm allocating 100% of this cost, $688,000, to the continuous improvement project, but those costs are broken up by the different cost types. I've got consulting cost, I've got capital cost, and I've got managed service provider cost. And again, I'm pulling this out of the general ledger, making sure that I can account for each transaction and each type of cost and each type of record of spend is being fit to the TBM framework. And again, as we move up, how much money did we spend on software? Here again, we're looking at almost $1.8 million at this cost center level that we're spending. And again, telecom, you can go on and on and on about tracking your spend within Alphabet as we go to that. And so you can see that, across towers and subtowers, I can see the different types of costs that are distributed across, the different types of allocations and distribution that are managed. And should, you want to look at that in a big format, zoom this up, send this out to a graphic file. If, there's a configuration change that's necessary for me to generate a PowerPoint, I'll add that later on. But we can zoom in and zoom out of our cost here within Alphabet and see how that is being fit to the different models. If I take one click back, I am back at my investment analysis dashboard. And what I'm seeing here are different types of questions. And so cost towers, here's my cost pools view. Here's the different, basically in Alphabet, it's implemented as a cost center type. These are directly from the TBM taxonomy. And then as cost management over here, this is where I am bringing in and rolling up costs. And I have a variety of ways to filter the items here. I can say, how many different cost centers do I have? If I do a search now, one of the things that we'll see is I've got 123 different cost centers that I am bringing money from the ledger and aligning that all the way up to the top level of the taxonomy to the right business unit that is going to be, allocated those costs, or the right capabilities that are going to be reflecting the cost to answer the question, what does it cost us year over year to deliver this capability? And now with the taxonomy and the way to account for cost, making sure that balancing layer over layer, then I can do this. Going back again into this investment analysis page, what I want to do is take you into a couple of the reports that are down here provided by our Alphabet Accelerator. And what we see are questions that are being, presented in a series of what we would call these question tiles. And if I look at this question right here, where do we spend and invest our budget? You're going to see some sort of a thumbnail graph about spend. Each of the questions has a drill down to show you further details. And so one of the things that we can do is look at a variety of ways to say, where do we spend and invest our budget? If I, clear the filters and clear the search patterns, hit submit, I'll start looking at this. The TBM analysis view is now, let me go choose the IT tower view, and then let me choose a level 1 view, and let me look at our spent budget for this year. And now what I'm seeing is a very reactive and a very compelling presentation that says for any one of the cost towers, and remember there are applications, delivery, end user, management, network, output, platform, on down through storage, those are the different towers that I am accounting for at level 1. If I were to choose a level 2 view, that means take it down to the sub-tower level, and now I start to see how costs are being brought into the report, for the year 2019, spent budget, what have I done at the sub-tower level. Again, can send these out to graphics and include them in a PowerPoint, and then configure Alphabet to look for PowerPoint systems there. I also see, look at the data source. Well, 1,900 objects have been found that deal with, what's the cost center, what's the object that is being, this cost is being allocated to, and then I have spent budget and planned budget that I've brought in. I have the cost types, the value of the money, and I'm now accounting for all of these pages, the transactions that not only gives me current year, but past year spend. It's all of our customers have asked us, can we track costs year over year? And we say, yes, we can. For our new Alphabet customers, one of the tasks that we often do first is help them bring in historical costs, just for an ability to see not costs since the beginning of time, but what's the last 5 years worth of cost? If it's easily available to be brought in, we can certainly bring that into Alphabet and then manage future spend and plan spend going forward. And so it's not uncommon to see planned budget, in the out years, so that we can generate those reports. That data source is available to you to make sure that you are looking at the actual rows of data that come in and generate these bar charts. If I wanted to look at a view by business capability, then one of the things that we'll see, and let's go back to level 1, is that, we're looking at the delivery capability, support and services capability, and then the market development capabilities as being the main anchor point for a spent budget at the capability level, business capability level. And this is across, 2019. What you'll see is that I've got some capital expenses here. I got some depreciation, amortization cost here. I've got expenses, I've got licensing, maintenance and support, and then shared services. And these are all common and standard TBM cost types that are being tracked and that are being brought in from the general ledger. And so now I can look at these reports and play across the different levels here and see what might happen as I zoom into delivery. I'll see customer management there from level 4. This is how much I'm spending on customer management, which is a level 2 business capability. So you have a variety of analytical flexibility and agility here by looking at what's the owning organizations for the assets, and then what is the consuming organizations for these assets as well. Going back one screen, I am brought back into, again, this financial page. And then if I look down to, what is our planned budget versus our spent budget, then, go down here and to generate another report that I can see within Alphabet. And I'm looking at sort of an overall, I've got no filter criteria set in here. And so I can just start looking at a business capability. Let's pick on delivery again and have Alphabet generate, what is my previous year budget was $780,000. My current year planned budget was almost $7 million, and I've spent roughly $6.7 million thus far in this year. And then here's the capital expenses by cost types that I have spent thus far this year. Here's my cost trend, my spent budget. You see over the years it wasn't so high, and now it's gone through the roof here in 2019, we're just reflecting last year's cost. And we got some current types of information that are shown here as well. We can look at any individual project that's down here. And, if we want to see the details of that project, what Alphabet will do is that one click will show us a highlight for the project. And then one more click, show the details, we'll actually jump into the project. So now that I've got these analytical reports, now I can actually support drilling down and jumping into, the different areas in Alphabet that are more EA focused to say, here's my consolidation project, look at my as-is architecture, look at my financials, and look at the monitoring that's going on here. Once I see my as-is architecture, I can see the applications that are impacted by this project. I can see the application portfolio chart, look at this sort of time quadrant for comparing applications from a business score and a technical score. Where should I invest? Which ones should I eliminate? And look at to see within this project, how am I spending money and allocating money to the different cost types for my operational expenses. If I look down further on my as-is architecture, I can see the project itself, the applications that are supporting the capabilities up across the top and the organizations. And then I can see the standard EA functions about life cycles. Notice that most of my applications here have reached end of life, because if the blue line is reflecting the current date, then I'm in trouble here. And I might need to look at some consolidation activities to say, maybe this project is going to move all of these toward this new MAFO portal that looks like it's got a pretty good lifespan and a runway in front of us. Clicking back, I simply leave the project perspective, come back into the Alphabet perspective, and I've been taken on a journey from looking at the different architecture portfolios. I want to switch right now to a view that is more administrative, and that is often focused on how do I get data into Alphabet. And when I log in as an administrator, I'm looking from a functional administration. I'm trying to administer the capabilities to get data into the repository. And one of the things that I'll do is I'll look at this data transfer push button called ADIF admin. ADIF is a short acronym for Alphabet Data Integration Framework. And so I have an admin console here in the Alphabet platform that lets me look at the different types of jobs that can be run to import and export data in and out of the repository. And one of the things that I can see is that, I generated an export of applications. Looks like I've done that quite often, over the years, maybe, several times. I've done that 27 times. I can bring that and kind of close that down a little bit. I can see the different types of jobs that are here that are visible. And then I can also see other types of jobs. Now, I'm going to look at the schemes that are export schemes, and I'm going to look specifically at export TBM cost. And what I can do is that I have generated all of the cost fields in an Excel format such that you can use. And so if I want to run this job at this point in time, I can say, just run this job. And now Alphabet has completed the generation of that file. I can download that file. It generates a zip file. Open up the zip and look at the costs that are shown that are now available for me. And I'm going to just quickly reformat the column widths here such that I can see that, I've got the year column, I've got the owner column, which is the business unit. And this is an ID that's been generated by Alphabet to help manage the alignment of these costs to the right business units, the right cost pools, the sub pools, and then the right objects. And then here again, these are application or project assets, and those are IDs that have been generated by Alphabet. So you don't need to worry about what they mean other than the fact that it's used to keep the data aligned very carefully. And so you see the sub tower where the costs are being rolled into. And then when you're done making those, changes, let's just say I don't save, but now I am back here. And then with the export job, there's also an import job. And so now I can look at the imports to re-bring in, TBM cost and imports, update the list of jobs, show me that I can bring in the utility. I did that successfully just earlier today. And so what I really want to do is just run this job now. And then when I choose the file, it's in the downloads area. And here's the latest one that was brought in. Let me open that up, upload, and now the job has, again, been imported back into Alphabet. It can be as simple as that, or it can be that you schedule these jobs to run at a specific point in time. I'm not suggesting that you run these manually all the time, but for our demonstration purposes, it is as simple as generating an extract, adding to that extract, or letting Alphabet, through its integration framework, go over and reach into the ledger and actually accumulate those without any human intervention, and that is possible as well. So with that, I hopefully have showed you that Alphabet is capable of handling and managing and coexisting with the technology business management methodology, which includes the framework and all things enterprise architecture that blend in very well with the taxonomies and the models. And so with that, I'm going to conclude my demonstration of Alphabet, and really that gets us back into this presentation that we have seen, the Alphabet product, incorporate that out. We're always talking about EA and we're always talking about TBM. And I would encourage you to follow Chris Borneman, who is our Chief Technology Officer here at Software AG Government Solutions. Chris has been talking about TBM on Government Talk Radio and then other venues as well. So these would be good people to reach out to. Chris would be glad to share some experience and discussions about TBM. And you can always reach me to talk about TBM and EA as well. And with that, Will, I think I'm done talking for a bit.
Okay, sir. Regrettably, you're going to do a lot more talking. The exciting part about these programs is when we get a flood of questions like we have. So here's what we're going to do. We are 10 minutes to the hour. That we're not going to let that stop us. So we are going to try to answer all the questions we have. So if you need to leave us, if you asked a question, we will make sure that we email you the response. But we're going to start off and not let the top of the hour preclude us from answering the questions. So we're also going to pose them to you the way they came in, Jeff. So it's going to go back to the beginning of your presentation. So the first one is as follows. I saw, quote, costs and cost centers associated with TBM towers, sub-towers, but not TBM services. How come? Or did I just miss it in the presentation?
What happens with the TBM taxonomy is that you consider that separate layers. And what you do is you first bring in, the cost into the cost pool layer. You take those costs and you roll them up or move them up to the cost pools and so forth. Then you bring them into the cost towers. Those cost towers then get allocated to services and applications and solutions up there in that service layer. And then finally from there, they get rolled up into the organizations that are either the owners of those services or the consumers of those services, or the business capabilities that those services are driven by. So the costs simply just are aligned and are connected layer by layer by layer up the TBM taxonomy.
Very good. The next one I have for you is as follows. In the demo, when showing the application cost group, I saw, quote, total applications equal 4, total services equal 6. What do services, quote, represent?
Well, services can be a subdivision of functionality. Think of an application, it might provide 5 or 6 services related to the types of data that it's managing. So a service could be a subset of functionality that's provided by an application, and it's just being tracked and focused around a deliverable capability for the organization. And it may be that you manage services individually, instead of managing the whole application and all the services at once, you could, in a sense, break the services out into a individually managed service provided under the context of an app, but delivered in its own life cycle and managed via its own life cycle. So just think of it as a function that is being managed in the context of an app that is individually deliverable and trackable.
The next I have for you is, how do you track forecast?
To me, forecasts are the way you track budget planning and what you plan to spend. So if I have mistaken a forecast, then I'm sorry, but I should typically associate a forecast with what you're intending to either spend or what you're either intending to bring in as revenue. Either way, Alphabet has a way to be configured to handle specifically forecasting if it's not the planned cost.
Can you perform comparison analysis for cost trend from previous years?
I'm not sure how to do that, but I would certainly dive into it. You have the cost. If you've got historical data in Alphabet, then you can certainly look at and maybe create a group of applications or a small portfolio for analysis purposes only, where you would say, compare this group of applications to this other group of applications that's similar. And in that way, you might be able to easily achieve comparing, a group of cost over the years. If you had, if you had apples to apples, you could compare the cost across those years and look for any trends that were maybe swayed by one application being a real, cost-heavy influencer on that group, and maybe, causing a spike in the trend graphs. So there's a variety of ways that I think Alphabet could be easily configured to do that comparative analysis.
Is risk management a part of Alphabet?
Alphabet does have a risk management module that tracks, not only application risk, but project risk, and then also technology risk. So that module is available, and it's one of the 5 major modules that are in the Alphabet solution.
All right, this one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to read it slowly. Many of the reports shows current spend and planned spend by tower or pool. Is there a capability to build out target allocations to construct a forward-looking roadmap? For example, we might want to reduce spend by X% in a given cost pool over a 3-year period. This would be planned spend under a year, less than a year. Actually, greater than a year is the way it's written. I'm sorry.
There are quite a number of reports that are easily configured in Alphabet. That might be an adjustment to one of our provided reports that's already in place. And so we just would need to understand the data points that you were wanting to see in that report, so that you could, basically move data around, regenerate a report, and look at changing your forecasted spend over the next, say, 2 to 3 to 4 years. Alphabet also has features for developing what we would call master plans, or strategic plans, versus tactical plans. Tactical plan is near term, what's coming next. Strategic plans are what's coming in over the next 3 years. And with any sort of strategic plan, there's a degree of variability and a degree of flexibility that's required. And when we start talking about 2 to 3 to 4 year plans, Alphabet has ways to develop scenarios and alternatives that can be contrasted. So I think the answer to that is we have a lot of support for looking out across the horizon for what might happen, and then developing alternatives for that.
How often is the financial data pulled into Alphabet?
I think that's a good question. I have worked a lot with a lot of the Alphabet customers, across the country, and the jury's out. Sometimes people want to bring in financial data, weekly. I've seen it work just as effectively when you bring in the financial data after month-end close. And so, not being an accountant, my answer would be, I think monthly would be probably an optimum time to bring in cost periodically.
How is traditional EA impacted by the alignment to TBM?
Well, I think what we see from a traditional TBM or EA perspective, we see applications supporting processes supporting organizations and users. And then as we look down from applications, we see the technologies that are impacted, and we see the deployments across servers and virtual machines, and we also see now, migration to the cloud. And so traditional EA is all about the execution stack, and we are now adding a structured financial taxonomy and categorization models to that, where we're not only growing up and down, we're growing side to side by bolting on and having the financial responsibility attached to these objects as well. We've had it over the past, but every customer had their different set of chart of accounts from a financial perspective. With TBM, we get a standard sort of chart of accounts that we need to accommodate and just have the discipline to embrace those categories from TBM, not go hog wild trying to change them, because they were developed to be consistent and to allow organizations to have common conversations about common cost types and cost structures. So some EAs will say, we don't need TBM to track costs. We know what a server costs. But when it rolls up to the people that are making the decisions, and they're having conversations with their neighbor after work sometime, and somehow the conversation goes to TBM, then the conversation can be common and easily understood by both parties. So TBM's there for consistency of discussion and investigation. EA just needs to make sure that they don't let the traditional EA get in the way of TBM conversations.
Okay, I am going to pose this last question to you. However, it might be too much to answer. We have plenty of time if you'd like to answer, but if you also want to answer it offline, that of course is your prerogative. So here goes. Can you please reiterate on the various use cases possible through the Alphabet EA tool? Also, how do the various use cases align to the various departments within an organization? You touched upon this in the presentation. However, I would like to visualize the usage of this tool across the organization by various stakeholders.
I could talk all day long on that, and I would prefer to address that, in an individual conversation, because the stakeholders, range from traditional enterprise architects to now the financial managers, technology managers, project managers, and then the strategists that are talking the 5-year plans. So I would prefer to address all the use cases that are traditionally embraced and supported and enabled by Alphabet in a separate conversation.
Okay, so what we're going to do then, to that questioner, Jeff will be provided your question and your contact information, as will our whole team, and he will be back in touch with you as soon as possible. And for the last few questions that came in, equally, Jeff will be back in touch with you with that. So please keep in mind, we're grateful for all of you to have been with us today. We had a very robust program. We are planning a full year of webcasts supporting both our federal and our state and local markets. So we do want you to stay up to date on those planned programs, and we would invite you to visit the events page under the company tab at softwareag.com to see the programs that we have, and you can register for those future coming webcasts. So with that, Jeff, thank you very much for a very, very insightful and exciting program today. The program has now ended. Enjoy the rest of your day.